Welcome back, everyone. As usual, if you have a camera and you can turn on your camera, could be great. Moving forward, I want to share with you some ideas, feedback about your Spring 1. I am sure that you are almost done with the Spring 2. Let's review feedback for Spring 1. And in general, probably is feedback for the middle part of the class. We just complete the midterm. Hopefully next week you're going to have grades. And more or less, we have complete half of the quizzes and the assignments. So at this point, you have a very good idea of what could be your final grade. Some people ask me about extra credit, bonus points, or something like that. I share this with everyone. There is no extra credit. I do not have any plan of extra activities. And the reason is things that I am going to show you today. So far, my best advice for extra credit, for improve your grade, is to work in your quizzes, your assignments, and prepare for the final exam. The final exam have exactly the same value as the midterm. So it could be a good idea that you review things. It's comprehensive. So everything that you answer in the midterm could be again in the final. And the expectation could be that the final is going to be a little bit more challenging than the midterm. The midterm was kind of easy, at least that is the idea. So start reviewing things for the final. That could be my best advice. No, I do not have any plan for drop scores, and I am going to show you why. So far, no plans for dropping scores, no plan for extra credits. My request for you is going to be to work harder in your assignment, quizzes, and the next exam. And again, it is something that I am going to show you. Right now, I am just telling you no, but my slides hopefully help me to explain why not. So, review of your first sprint. I want to be clear. This feedback is about your first sprint. This feedback is about what you submitted the previous week. Some of you already submit the sprint 2. My feedback do not include what you submit in the sprint 2, only the one. So talking about your projects, you did this 2 sprints. Please do not forget, you should submit today your second sprint, and something that I am going to talk about, not sure if I am going to have time today or next lecture, is about the sprint 3. I am going to ask you for another sprint with the same project, so that is coming. But if I do not have enough time today, it's something that I introduce the next lecture. Please do not forget to submit sprint 2, the same requirements, the same elements by tonight. Talking about what you submitted here. We take a look to all of this. And obviously the graders, the TA, they are going to go deeper into the details and they are going to provide you feedback. What I am going to share is use a quick overview of things, and hopefully you can help me. What we reviewed previously, and I am talking about previously from the lecture 2 to the exam, was stories, task, acceptance criteria. I think we have been talking about that a long time. You have done several assignments, several quizzes, and I continue asking for this in the new iterations, the product backlog, and I am going to continue doing that. So you are going to have still opportunities to practice. But, well, theoretically at least, you know about it, stories, tasks. Another thing that we review, another core topic was clean coding. And in clean coding, I think we talk a lot also with examples and so on about these keys, dry, and a little bit of Javadoc. But probably kiss and dry, a lot. Yeah. So again, you are going to continue doing programming. We're going to continue reviewing these things. Yeah, your program should compile, your program should run. You are good developers, you have knowledge of programming with Java. So obviously that impacts your grade, compile and run. But the extra, the real thing that is connected with us in this class is clean coding, right? Nothing really hard, just keep it simple, do not repeat things, and somehow some guidelines for the coding. Hopefully it's not so complicated. Yeah, the final exam is cumulative, so everything is going to be there, including these things. Yeah. So I show you examples, and in particular, I remember lecture 10. There is the video posted, so you can go and check the lecture 10. And this was one of the slides in the lecture 10. We reviewed these red boxes, and we talk about the error there. Hopefully we agree as today that this slide is showing you something that is not okay with this try and kiss and so on. So you remember this one. It's wrong. We reviewed it before. The last thing that we review, design. We talk about clean design, separation of concerns, dependency injection, low coupling. We need to review more about it. We used to start with this, and then we have the exam. So we are kind of in the middle part of this. Several topics are coming. But somehow we talk about the importance of low coupling and separate things. At least those two we are familiar, and you are familiar, you help me with several things. So clean coding, clean design, stories and tasks, 3 things. And the good news is like I can review those 3 things in your sprint 1. I am going to review the same in your sprint 2 and in sprint 3, but I can take a look to your sprint 1 and figure out where we are, and if we really need bonus points or what is going to happen in the future. Help me with that. Review. Stories. This should be easy. We have been working with this the full semester. So what are the possibilities of any error here? Story is not the same as a task, and it's not the same as the acceptance criteria. This works in red. I am not going to talk about the definition again. You can review it the first 2 weeks of the class. And my expectation is that the definition and the difference between all of them is clear for everyone. For the 80 people in the class, hopefully everyone connected, or the people that is going to watch the video later. Scenario number 1. What do you think about this case? What do you think about this case? Story A. If I ask you in your exam about invest for A, what do you think? I agree with the size. I agree with the size is a problem. Any other thing? Negotiable. Do you remember something that we talked about? Negotiable. What is the meaning of negotiable? And when you write this story, from the beginning, if I just stop here the review, and there are people telling me that there are problems with the small, and there are problems with the negotiable. So there are problems with two of the invest principles. Automatically, this A is wrong, right? I mean, it's like check, create your story, review the invest. If you have any issue with any of the letters, stop and redo. We have done that before. You know about it. Should not have the help. I agree with all the people in the chat. What I am worried right now is the people in the chat represent the full class. Because this is not from previous classmates from previous semesters. This is something that one of you submit. Well, this is something that one team of 5 people submit. So this is what you are doing. And we're in the middle of the class. And if we have problems with stories now, we're in the week 10, that is going to be a big failure. Because this is going to be again in your final. This is one of the points in which I am worried about bonus points or extra credits. What is the reason for bonus points or extra credits if they are going to be around the same? Adding to what you told me in the chat, I want to have a title bar. That is really what you want? The stories. The stories are things that have value for the customer. Is really what the customer wants to have a title bar? Or is what you want as a developer? Because what the user wants is functionalities. What the user wants is load data, save data, move things, drag things, visualize things. It is really the title bar the important thing to mention here? An open question. My answer is that is not the important thing. And someone support that, not really. Exactly. If we analyze this, really the story, and I fully agree with the chat, the story, this story in particular, is not about the bar. This story in particular is, as you mentioned, about this is what you want. We review examples of this, examples in which what I want and the so that, be careful about the requirement is the thing that you need to put as the thing that you want. For me, for someone in the chat, this looks like that what you want is minimize, maximize, and close. This is what really seems that you want. The bar is just the element that you are going to use to achieve that goal. Think about it. When you create your stories, what do you really want? And what is the goal? And what is the medium? In this case, your goal looks to be the second, not the first one. What do you think about the tasks? Because so far my understanding was that we know that the task for a user story are tasks connected to achieve the story, connected to achieve the requirement. What do you think about this task number 1? Is really a task? And well, at least someone, okay, at least 3 people in the group tell me no. I agree with you guys. Setting up the project, a task for this story? No. Again, I do not know if you have previous knowledge that is different to the things that we have reviewed here. I do not know if you are there listening this video or attending this class, but I am very worried about this in a project, in the project file. What do you think about the acceptance criteria for the same story? generic, unclear. We talk about this, right? I mean, maybe I did this in a different class, but behave as expected. I think in some lecture we talk about as expected. Be more specific. What does it mean as expected? It cannot be tested. Exactly. So, guys, the people in the chat, great. I think hopefully we're moving forward. Again, hopefully that chat represents the class. Hopefully this was just a mistake, a small one. This is going to affect your grade. Hopefully in the spring 2 you can fix it, or you do better. What I am going to do, if you send me an email asking or appealing, probably it's going to ask the people to watch this video. So that is the reason because I am giving so many details here. But this is a problem. This is not correct. What do you think of the B? That is a different thing. And I fully agree with you. This is not a requirement for the application. This is something that you get for the frame. So for several different points of view, the A have issues. B, similar to the previous one, it is too big, it is not negotiable, it is more like an epic. Moreover, what you really want is the 3 menu items, or what you want is to create, to save, and to load. I think we review examples similar to this before. And again, I think that if we talk about stories, if we talk about requirements, here in particular, what we're talking about, what you should mention is you want to save, you want to load, you want to create. And those 3 are itself stories. And those 3 have acceptance criteria and tasks. You do not want the menu buttons. The menus are, again, the medium, but not the goal, not the requirement. So, again, check about your task, check about the acceptance criteria. This is wrong. People in the chat, I agree with you. Hopefully I was clear. If not, if you did this, send me an email, we can review office hours, but these 2 are very, very concerned. Hopefully that is the only one. So if that is the only one, like one team in the full class, probably I didn't mention this here, but let's review another one. A different team, obviously. In a different team, what do you think about A? Fully agree with the people in the chat. Again, ambiguous, negotiable, details, clear. In particular, something that I want you to notice is, did you notice the story and the verification? Did you notice that the story is about a menu? That again, you like before, the menu is not the requirement. The requirement is the functionality that that menu provides. But okay, you want a menu, but the verification criteria is exactly as you described in the chat. The verification criteria is more like the requirement that the story itself. So my point here, guys, I think you have the information. I think the information is here, but my recommendation, review what should be in the story, the requirement, what should be in the acceptance criteria, what should be in the description of task. There are 3 different things. And this is not fine. It can be fixed. Moving things, splitting. We review that in some point. Your epics or your stories that are incomplete or not follow all the invest principles can be fixed. But those stories with everything fixed is something that I am expecting you create with your team. And this submission is not invest again, and probably is not exactly focused as a requirement. What could make it better? I think you will notice the similarity with this one and the other one. The real stories, you are talking about them. The real stories is you want to load data. You want to save data. You want to create working spaces. Those are the three things that are mentioned in the verification criteria. But those are the three things that you want to do. And if you create a story about, as a user, I want to be able to create workspaces, then you can define the verification criteria for that. Or you can define the task for that. And I am sure that you're aware of the task to create a working space, or how do you verify that the working space exists. Similar for the save and the load. All of you mentioned those three because all of you are working in those three. The note that I am sharing with you is be careful. If you know that those are the three things that you want as a user, create working spaces, save data, load data. Why not? You mentioned that as the stories, as the functionalities. If you want to create a story for the graphical user interface, go ahead. But those three, the new working space, the save, the load, they are not verification criteria. They are stories, requirements in a different story with their own verification and their own tasks. Remember, a requirement, a user story, is a behavior, a functionality, or a service that the system is going to provide. So always, when you write a story, think about what is the functionality here? What is the service here? What is the behavior that I am implementing here? One of these three categories, your story should be there because that makes the story valuable. This is tricky, and I put this here used to ask for the survey of you, but immediately I get an answer in the chat. It's not clear. I could agree with that. For me, it wasn't clear when I read it. Like, I want a fixed operator box. I am not pretty sure what is that, so that I can select operators. I can make an effort, and I understand that we are talking about the left panel, just because I am the customer and I understand the functionality of the project that I ask you to do. But when you do a story, think about the stakeholders. Think about this is going to be understood by other people. We are going to agree what this means. Just ask yourselves the invest letters. This is what this customer wants. This is valuable for the customer, the menu. This is clear for everyone. We're going to be able to negotiate this because everyone understands the same. If one people in your team says no, redo the story. Work with that. Do something different. Guys, you are 5 people, and the reason is to talk with others. I read this, and I am concerned that it's only one member in the team writing the stories without the feedback of others. I have no way to verify that, but again, this one, big question marks. And hopefully you can review it later. Another one. What do you think about this one? I do not know if was in this class or in a different one that I mentioned what happened when you have an and in a story. I think if I remember correctly, and you have the videos, that we talk about this and in the story basically mean that it's going to be too big. We talk about this having and is multiple functionalities. We talk about this having the and is something that you can split. We talk about it. So I am really surprised reading this story. Like, okay, we're talking about something, but in the practice, you are not following the idea. I don't know. But well, even if you do not remember that we talk about the and, as everyone is mentioning in the chat, is too big. Because we are talking about create, drag, drop, and other things. Moreover, exactly. I think we talk about these adjectives like easily. Do you remember what we mentioned about using those guys in the stories? Thank you. The testing, right? I mean, tell me, what are you going to do to test that was easy? Is just a comment, really not the most important part. The most important part is, and there are two stories, not only one. In fact, when you check the acceptance criteria, you have two acceptance criteria, one for create and the other for the drag and drop. You have the idea, two acceptance criteria, two things to do, two stories. This one. That one do not have value. We are again in the same problem. What the user want, what the customer want, are the functionalities, not the menu or the window or the frame. Those are just the elements to access the functionalities. I don't know, use some examples. That is correct. As mentioned before, you can have this story for the graphical user interface. You can have this story for the window. Obviously clear. I want to have, and you can explain your interface. Do not use technical details. You're not talking with developers. Another thing. You want the save button, or you want the save functionality? You want to be able to save the workspaces and so on. The first one, okay, you are talking about save. My only point could be focus on the functionality. I want to be able to save the workspace. It's not about the bottom, and it's not about select. But, well, okay, more or less. What about the 2 and the 3? Yes. You mentioned in the chat. The story is the save functionality, and you can create a story for that. This 3 looks like, and use what I check reading this, looks more like the tasks that are connected with that implementation of the save functionality. It's like, okay, I am going to save. That means that I want to access the option. In some point, I am going to be asked about the name for the file in which I am going to save. And then, well, somehow I need to do a traversal for all the workspaces with all the nodes, and then, etc. In particular, this one with the file looks like a task for the save. The story, the requirement, the functionality is saved. The dialog or the selection of the name of the file looks like one step for the task. The task saving, one of the steps, selecting the name for the file, selecting where it's going to be saved all the data. So again, ask yourselves with your stories, this paragraph fulfill all the invest letters? This paragraph is really a task or is a step for one task? Is a requirement? Is a full functionality or not? Just think about it. And again, work with your team. At least 2 people, but one person working alone is going to be a bad idea. Again, I do not know if you are working with your team. If you are working with your team, please show to other people. We have reviewed cases like this several times, and the people in the chat is always giving me correct answer. I do not know what is going to happen with the rest of the class, but hopefully you have the opportunity to review the videos. Lecture 10, this one. Any question, let us know. Okay, I am receiving a question about the class diagram. Don't worry, I am going to talk about class diagram. Good. Stories for graphical user interface, as I mentioned. Just create a story, create a thing. As a user, I want to have the opportunity to have, like for this one, on my screen, a set of icons that I can select, a working area, and a set of options in which I can select saving, loading, blah, 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 the menu. You can mention menu, you can mention options, it doesn't matter. Talk about the graphical user interface. Several of these are talking about that. Just be careful that the verification criteria is a verification criteria for a graphical user interface. And the verification criteria for a graphical user interface is having those things on the screen. Period. Think about it. If you're doing the graphical user interface, your work finished when you are able to provide a frame with all the elements that is working, that you can click, select, and move forward without functionality. Your work finished there. And you provide a verification criteria for your team, like, guys, here, this is the graphical user interface, it's running, check the menu. You can select things, click, 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 everything is working. What are you going to connect with that menu? What is going to happen with the user to click in my menu? That is your problem. But I am done with the graphical user interface. You can create a story for that and a verification criteria for that. And that verification criteria do not include the verification criteria for saving, loading, compiling, and other things. Because this is one thing, those are different things, independent. Remember, the first one in the invest. I do not need those ones. I do not need the save and load in order to test my graphical user interface. I do not need those stories to provide a verification criteria for this one, the one from the interface. It is fine to have stories for the interface, but do not mix the stories of the interface, the view, with the stories of the model, saving, creating spaces, loading data, even the drag and drop of the icons or the connections of the icons. There are a lot of things happening in the project, but for some reason, we want to connect all of them with one item in the graphical user interface. That is not the case. I have one team in particular that submit these 3 stories. This is full stories for the Spring one. What do you think? And I want you to think about it. One sprint, 5 people, 3 stories. Makes sense. I am asking you to think not as a student, but think about as a developer, as an engineer. You have 1 week to work in a project, and you have a team of 5, but you only put in the Spring backlog 3 stories. That's all. Looks good. And again, you make my point. 3 stories, If I only have 3 stories, but I have 5 people, it's like, what is going to happen? This is not what we want to do with the Agile, right? I mean, we review the task and the people. Something is wrong with the numbers. Now, moreover, if you're thinking like, well, but I create 3 stories and those 3 stories are covering all the requirements in the system, maybe, just maybe, your stories are too big. And if your stories are too big, they are not stories, they are epics. And if they are epics, you need to split them in stories. Review the keywords here. One story, I want the panel with the symbols. A different story, drag and drop. One story, I want to have this working space. A different story, I want to create new working spaces. One story, I want to connect the nodes. Connect the nodes. It could be several stories because there are several things there, but well, depending on what you are doing. At least easily. 2 of them become new stories, at least 2. And at least you could have 5 and maybe 1 per user, I don't know, but you need to split this. 3 stories do not represent the system. Good. Anyway, guys, feedback about stories. I do not want to repeat this more because probably the people that is here, it use like stories again, but just for the people that maybe make some mistakes, an opportunity to improve, an opportunity to review. This could be in your exam, this could be in your next quiz, and obviously this is going to be graded in your sprint 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully you can improve it. Use more examples. If you need more help, please send me an email. We can talk in office hours. This for everyone. Use, if you need, review, stories, tasks, and epics. It's going to continue being there. Now, set up the project is not a task. It could be something that you put in the product backlog, but as a story, remember, as a technical thing, but it's not a task for a functionality. Here, in the previous example, what you are giving me are stories for functionalities, and setting up the project is not part of the task. The tasks are the tasks that are connected to accomplish the functionality. Any setup is for the project, not for one specific functionality. It's not something that you specify for all the functionalities. Well, if you get stuck, the track of your work is going to be per day, not per hour. So if you, for some reason, something happened today, tomorrow you are not going to report advance in your task. So you are going to be there in the meeting in the morning reporting that something is wrong. Remember, every day you basically mention to your team what you did and what you are going to do. So it's per day that you are moving forward. Good. Anyway, stories, source code. Source code, the minimum thing that I am asking the TAs to review, keys and drive, and guidelines, right? The things that we reviewed before, and there is a lecture in which we review things. You can take a look, but just for you. Do you remember this slide? Again, I think that I mentioned in the lecture 10 that this was an issue, that you do not need to do this, that this is not dry keys. There are some lines that you do not need unless you're working with multi-threading, right? Team number one. Okay, deja vu. Another team. Okay, two randomly. Three. Guys, we mentioned that that is an error and you're going to lose points for that. And even though you submit that, obviously my question is, why? I mean, if you think that is correct, hopefully we could have had office hours weeks ago. There are 5 people in the team, so I am assuming that 15 people at least, and I didn't review all the source code, but 15 people didn't notice that we talk about this being not dry, not key. Anyway, second video, please, if this is your project, any reason for having all these things? So far, if I remember correctly, we agree that you do not need that. I remember people in the chat agreeing with that we are not using multi-threading, we do not need all that garbage. You can go directly with these 2 lines. 2 lines instead of all this. We talk about it. There is a lecture about it. I am not going to go into the details, but this is not right. This is not right. No. So again, this is maybe the reason because I am not convinced of bonus points or extra credits. Really, it's more about the credits that you already have access. It's like these 3 are going to lose points in something that is pretty simple and we reviewed a long time ago. So more than extra points is like, guys, if you need to review things, go back to the lectures and take a look. And again, if you need office hours, if there is some question that you could have, hopefully you can participate during the lecture. We're here 1 hour, so the idea could be to discuss things like this. But if you do not want to talk with your friends around, office hours, we can talk in the same way, but 1-to-1 or something like that. So think about it. Yeah, in fact, that is a very good point. Someone in the chat is mentioning, well, this confusion could be because this source code is included in some links online. And without mentioning where. Guys, be careful with academic integrity. A quick look to the source code and, well, it is okay. You can use tutorials. You can use maybe the same references online. That is okay, but remember, one thing is to use the reference and the other, very different, copy-paste. Yeah, if I go and check one example, I could reuse things from the example, but 2 things. You need to recognize that the source code is not yours, someone else. Second, if you're going to do copy-paste, copy only the things that you need. You do not need to copy the full example with things that maybe you are not using. Because basically you are telling the people that you copy-paste this, but you do not know what is happening with some kind of line. in particular, that this invoker, runnable, is all about multi-threading, and your project is not about that. Be careful. And again, if you have questions about the lines, Professor, I found this example. Which part of the example is useful for me? What is happening with this line that I do not understand? That is something that the TAs can help you, or I can help you. But do not submit things with lines that are extra, because it's something that we are searching for. No extra lines. Do not repeat things. Keep it simple. That is what we're grading. So that is the reason because I am mentioning this particular part. It's not the only one, but please review. Good. So yeah, that is the tutorial. Again, just be careful to use what you need. Do not copy paste everything. Just like with the stories, when you are taking one line of code from one example, ask yourselves, this line, what is doing this line? Do I need this line? The software that I am developing need this line. Is this line giving something to achieve the goal of complete my project? Yes or no? Ask about it. And if the answer is no, remove the line. And if the answer is I do not know, ask for help. Do not just add source code to your project for nothing, because this. Anyway, typical examples, but moving forward, other things. Anyone with ideas of Javadoc? What do you think about this Javadoc lines 5 to 10? Okay, thank you. Well, I removed the auto, so, but number one, this arroba at description, no need. The author should be down. I mean, the first paragraph is the description of whatever, the class or the method without description. And then down, you can put the author and you can put other things. Again, if you need to review Javadoc, a lot of tutorials, take a look, review the Javadoc. This is a class with the name common constants. This is a class that have this. That is all. That is the only thing that you have in the class. And this team have this class. Notice the content of the class, notice the name. And then we are using the class to create an object in the line 16. So this is the class for getting the Javadoc. And this is one use of the class. Any comment about it? Exactly. I have the same question. Why create an object? Everything is static. Everything is public. Everything is static. Everything is final. 2 comments. Obviously, and the people in the chat agree, what is the reason for creating an object if everything is static, public? Number 2, do we really need a class, this one, in which the only thing that we have is static variables? Could it be possible to put those static variables in a different place? I mean, do we really need a class only for that? Remember, I am aware that this is used Spring 1, so probably the team create a class and the current content of the class is use the constant, and later they are going to add more things. So I understand that this is a beta version. I understand that it's something that you're working on. But my advice, if at the end this class only have this, okay, you have the idea. do not create objects if you do not have methods or attributes. If everything is static, you can access with the name of the class and the name of the variable. That's it. Keep it simple. Exactly. 100% agree. I mean, hopefully, if this is your project, you're reading the chat. That is all. Name of the class, dot, name of the constant. That's it. So this is the part that I want to check is wrong, unless you add things here. But right now, no need for the object. Anyway. This is a typical example in which you're going to have your class main and you're going to have a loop in the class diagram. You remember, is the class, you have a variable that is global, it's going to be a diamond, a variable of the same type as the class, the loop. Tell me, do we need this for your assignment? Do we need this loop, this variable in the line 18 for this example? And I am asking, even though I am not giving you the full code, but it's the same code that you are doing for your assignments. Do we need this variable to be global? Do you remember programming 110? If you're going to use a variable in more than one method, you need the variable global. But if the variable is going to be used only in one method, only in one place, it's a good idea to have the variable local. Variable locals are better than the globals. We need to talk more about it, but always, 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 as a good practice, if the variable is going to be used only by one method, put the variable inside of that method. No need to have more things outside. Well, if you want to create a singleton, you need that one. Yeah, for sure. My question is, do we need the class that have the main to be a singleton? Is the singleton pattern something that we use in the classes that have the main? That is the goal of the singleton, to host the main? Exactly. You do not need a singleton here. Yeah, if you want to create a singleton, you need that variable and you need the getter. Yeah. But here, the main, again, you're solving the same problem. Any reason to have as a singleton the class with the main? Anyone is going to use it? And if you think about it, no one is going to use the main. No one should. In fact, the only thing that you need to do is, if you delete the variable from the line 18 and you put the variable here, local, it's going to work in exactly the same way that it's working right now. And just by moving the variable from global to local, you remove the loop. Your class diagram, clean. No need to have a loop, a reflection, if that one is not providing any functionality. Clean coding, clean design. No need to have a global variable here if the only method that is using it is this one. Use delete it. A repository could be a good example of something that could use a singleton. Yeah, I agree with that. Some of you follow that idea with different names, but you create a repository in which you store the information about the nodes that you're creating and the connections. And it's very easy to have that one as a singleton because then you can access that repository from everywhere without having to share an object or a parameter or something crazy. So for that one, it's a good idea. Singletons in your code, I am expecting, and I have reviewed some of them, but for the main, no needed. With the experience that you have, with the project that you are doing, what do you think about this class? What feedback could you provide to the author of this class? Okay. As usual, people in the chat, I am happy that you are there. Agree with you. Plural, usually not a good idea unless you are creating a collection, but this one do not look like a collection. There is not that structure there. So should not be plural. I understand that maybe the problem is that there is a class icon that already exists. So you need to do something to identify your class icon from the class icon that is maybe in the API in Java. Do something different, not the plural. Why the globals? Exactly the same question that I have is, I have this bunch of variables that I am sure that they are useful for something. I am not telling you that the variables are not good. My problem is, as a reader, that if I want to understand what is happening here, it is very, very hard, because basically I have these names. And do you remember? It's a good idea to use names that are descriptive. I am not going to ask you to add a comment about what is the meaning of label, what that variable is handling or storing. It is better to change the name and put a name that is more descriptive. Moreover, obviously, uppercase for the name of a variable. I know you have to select a different name. Very bad names. Yeah. So guidelines, dry, keys, guidelines, basically Java doc, and the names of the classes and the variables. There is not much that we're asking for. Good name for your classes, good name for your method, good name for your variable names. I think we reviewed that also in some lecture. There should be some video there in which we talk about this. Apply what we review in your projects, like this one. This one reason only, because I am mentioning this. Several of you implement this idea of the factory. I know this source code very similar to this one, in which the name of the class is factory, icon factory, for instance, and in which the name of this method is create. When I review some of your projects and I check this icon factory, and icon factory have a method create, and that method create receive a parameter and then return an icon. It's a very good thing to do. You know the factory pattern. If you have reviewed this before, great. If not, you can review it, but it's a good idea to have one class in which the news happen. It's a bad idea to create objects everywhere. Centralizing the creation of the objects in one class. One class is the one that create, in this case, the icons, and that class is usually a factory, and that class have a create method. That is a good idea. It catch my attention that some projects use that factory and create, and others, this example, just change the names. This was util, which is kind of generic. I was thinking about util of like what, and then I discovered, well, it is a factory. The idea is good, factories. The only thing, because I'm mentioned this and I copied this code is, guys, be careful with academic integrity. Be careful with the things that you are taking from the tutorials. We discussed this before. If you're taking something from a particular source, please be sure to mention the source in the comment. This is from a particular place. This is not my code. You can reuse blocks of code, things that you learn from the internet. If you present something like yours, it should be something that you really create. Please avoid any suspicion or any probability that you get flagged as, academic integrity problem. Academic integrity is going to be 0, and well, you do not want to lose all the points in an assignment when you can get some points. I am not telling you that this example is academic integrity issue at all. The only thing that I am commenting is I noticed that there are projects using factory, is a factory correctly. And I just noticed that this one and others, is not the only one, have names that are not the factory, are generic, like util, and obviously it's like, well, why these names? Why is not a factory like the others? Obviously, I do not review all your code. I am not telling you that this is a copy or a problem, but the TAs, the graders are going to review that. My request for you is please be careful with that. If you're using source code from some sources, just document that, provide the reference. There could be several different projects following similar approaches, yes. There could be several different projects implementing the factory, yes. You know what? The issue is when you have a project that have a factory and the factory is not used. Just think about it. You have a project in which you have the structure to have this, a factory for icons. That looks like a very good idea. But then when you review the rest of the code, the factory is never used, or is used only in one point. But in others, you use the new. And just like coincidence, there is another project in which also you have a factory, but you never use the factory. You use the factory only in one point, not in others. And just by coincidence, both projects use the factory in the same point, not in the others. And that is the point in which it becomes suspicious. It's like, what are the possibilities of two teams creating a factory, not using the factory except for one thing in one point? Again, the TAs are going to review this. My only comment, just because I kind of overview things, is be careful. Good. So that is my only point. If there are two teams with the factory and one have the name factory and the other not, but they are using really the factory, or maybe they miss the factory in one point, but it's not the same point as the other team. I mean, you notice that there are two people working separate. There is no issue. It's not academic integrity issue because you both are using the approach of the factory. That is not the problem. The problem is when the things go exactly the same, the errors and the connections. Again, if you're working separate, nothing to worry. But if someone have access to your source code, it's going to be evident. Just be careful. Do not share your source code. Keep your project separate. Again, I am not telling anything bad about this project. I just take this as an example of one example of factory that just changed the names and catch my attention, for the reasons that I mentioned before. So what do you think about this class? And just for the context, what some people call icons, in this particular project, I think they are operators. So what do you think about this class? Pipe is one of the operators. Extend, the class operator, the class icon, is one of the blocks. What do you think? question? Exactly. I have that question too. Okay. Again, it's one sprint, so probably there are new things coming in the second sprint. However, as a feedback, if this is your class and nothing else is going to be added, using extension for this, I am pretty sure that you can accomplish the same results. And maybe you can use these values as a parameter for the constructor, right? I mean, think about it. It looks like the only thing that is different from this specialization compared with the parent is some values. Could we put a constructor with parameters in the parent class and use receive the parameters and put those values in the variables? Because there is no variables here. There is no new attributes. The attributes are in the parent. So it could be maybe the idea that a constructor with parameters could use help to put those values into the variable. I don't know. Again, if this is the only thing that your class is going to have, probably you do not need it. For the dialog box, I have a question about it. Dialog box, yeah, I mean, double click will be a good idea, or use one click in the area in which you do not have connections. Both options, up to you. But yeah, as far as with the mouse I can open the dialog, it's going to work. Okay, so review this one. I am going to stop with this one. Next lecture, I want to share more about not only the source code, the class diagrams, and introduce the sprint tree for your project. Something is going to change with your project. My goal is that by now you understand how to handle this drag and drop and the icons and the connection. So if I change my requirements and you have another sprint to work, if my change are small, you can accomplish a new project in a new sprint. I'm not sure about the question. Show some graphical user interface details for the number of inputs. Not really. The detail is there. You have the bar and the dots, left or right. Left for the input, right for the outputs. One square is only one, and the bar is multiple. So that is use enough for the user. Let's assume that the user understands that part. Good. No invalid connections. You cannot, I mean, invalid connection, you mean like in one point connect to? No. Several more. Don't worry. We still have 1 month to work. So in 1 month, at least 2 more sprints. But well, I am going to explain next lecture our next sprint. Okay, guys, I am going to stop here. See you next lecture.